dear learners on the platform of MOOCs. I am Professor Nafis Ahmad Ansari from Department of Political Science of Aligarh Muslim University. In today's discussion, we are going to know about the Whiteleyism in the United Kingdom. To investigate the impact of wartime government actions on industrial organization, the Whiteley Committee on Relations between Employers and Employed was founded in 1916 as a subcommittee of the Cabinet Committee on Reconstruction. The commission was the government's response to several pre war developments in industrial relations, including the increase in trade union membership and strikes, the rise in labor demands for worker control, and the realization that restrictions on strike imposed during the war would be lifted after it was over. John Henry Whiteley led the committee. Whiteley, a prosperous businessman, Liberal MP for Halifax, and Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons from 1911 to 1921, embodied a significant liberal stream of thinking when he called for a social revolution to prevent a political revolution such as the one that has occurred in Russia. He advocated for a new liberalism that would instigate social upheaval and reform without the Labour Party's madcap or utopian schemes. Whiteley in 1918 said, despite the committee being predominantly composed of labor movement activists, the cautious wording and overall spirit of compromise of Whiteley Report 1997 and 1998 may help explain the consciousness of the report's recommendations. Whiteley was a reflection of the 19th century voluntarist approach to the labor relations. Originating in laissez-faire economics, voluntarism was a term used to describe the opposition of employers and trade unions to government involvement and the state's reluctance to control the employment relationship. Vitalism voluntarist foundations have some unforeseen implications for internal relations in the public sector. Because of its history, most public employees do not have the same legal status as those in other regions of Europe, and public sector internal relations are susceptible to changes in the government policies from progressive to regressive public administration. It also impacted on the development of a unique and hybrid model of union behavior. Whitley report. The committee generated five chapters. The first, referred to as the Whitley report, focused on a well organized industry and suggested creating joint industrial council JICs. It created a great stir increased by the government's defined endorsement of its recommendations. As the Webs observed, pre-existing currents of the opinion of which the report seemed to be fulfillment, according to Clay, were the cause of this. The assertions in the final report is that a large measure of self-government was conferred upon the joint councils, was reminiscent of the syndical call for complete control. The first report established three basic requirements that any conciliations apparatus must meet. It must be national in scale, standing, a permanent, and it must be decentralized in operation. And even though it is a national in scope, syndicalists criticize its proposed hierarchy of the national, district, and works council for suggesting a top down organizational system that would make national councils the organization's foundations. The union representatives on the Whitley committee maintained that the national JIC was a superstructure with no foundations and therefore unfeasible in the absence of robust organizations at the works committee level. Other countered that establishing works councils would be challenging due to multi unionism and poorly organized workplaces, and that the top down method was required to address this issue. The triple organization had to operate on a common principle, but its specific role would depend on the individual's involvement. The report addressed concerns from settling salaries and conditions to technical educations and training. It is highlighted the key components of a threefold framework for conciliation machineries. The report repeatedly makes the case that state involvement should be kept to encouraging or counseling as very business and district will have different demands. The Whiteley report taken together captures some of the major themes in British social and economic thought during the war in 1917. The necessity of the conciliation to prevent industrial conflict, the growing recognition of the distinctions between the capital and the labor, and the necessity of reconstruction and reconditioning of industry as more effective means of cutting production's cost than wage reductions. Even though the report was replete with moral precepts, they were also a practical answer to appease labor during the international revolution and impending post war demands for drastic domestic reform. Most of the trade union leaders on the committee agreed with its strategy and were eager to see vitalism implemented in the public and private employment sectors. Thus, the tenets of Whiteley denotes the emergence of a pluralistic approach to FIR and expanding awareness of necessity of government involvement in business. World War II reinforced this opinion as the Wartime Reconstruction Committee of 1940s placed a central planning committee high on its agenda. Whiteley's flexibility, which allowed for adjustments based on the situation, was one of its main advantages, as the committee pointed out. Nevertheless, Whiteley's difficulties obtain acceptance by the public sector throughout the war years, point to a significant flaw in the voluntarist philosophy and underpinning Whiteley. The government's resistance to acknowledging union organization among its workers were evident in repeated exchanges in the Commons, and while it eventually conceded by embracing Whiteleyism, acceptance union wins were gradually and difficult to achieve during interwar period. Adoption of Whiteleyism in public services. Despite the diversity of the public sector, three historical subsectors can be identified: salaries and earning, manual or white collars, paid from taxes are provided by the central government or the civil service. Wages in the second group, which is local government, are paid for by a mix or local taxes, federal funds. A third conventional group was made up of nationalized enterprises. Rationalized progressive modernization that occurs between 1945 and 1979, the era of national bargaining of and the growth of vitalism is reflected in this classification. Notwithstanding their shared vitalism origin, public service and the trade union activity have historically developed a response to the material limitations of regional conditions. The local government illustrates a significant disparity in union perspectives and practices between manual laborers and white collar workers before 1914 within each service, fearing that the retrogressive step, while delivering gains, would not provide tenure stability, higher pay scale, or superannuation, all seen as essential to draw professionals. Municipal officers were reluctant to behave like private sector unions. The strike weapons was disgusting, and trade unionism were nuisance. They had unique feelings. They were a new professional class of skilled bureaucrats needed by the beneficials to the expanding public community services. There are certain objectives of Whiteley Council. Number one is to establish broad guidelines for the same and to create mechanism for discussing issues regarding the conditions of service. Next is to offer most effective way to use staff's ideas and experiences. Third is increasing employee participation and accountability for deciding on and adhering to the working condition. Next is to promote staff's member further education. Next is to increase public service efficiency and advance employee welfare to put forward legislative purposes for. The next is to increase public service efficiency and advance employee welfare. And the last is to put forward legislative proposals that affect civil workers' employment positions in any way. Authority of Whiteley Council is concerned. The councils have only consultative authority. These councils' issues about staff management are discussed by both the staff and the officials. The outcome could see both parties coming to an understanding or coming to differ. If they come to consensus, great, but if they can't agree after talking it out, the department head is free to take whatever actions he sees fit. Thus, the government remains fully accountable to the parliament despite the Whiteley councils. Although the government's adoption of the Whiteley system suggests that it intends to utilize the procedure to the greatest extent possible, it cannot give up the right to act in the public interest while exercising its authority and carrying out its duty. As far as the organization of the Whiteley Council is concerned, the missionary consists of three important offices. One is National Council, second is Departmental Council, and the last is District Committees. When we talk about the National Council, it has 54 members, half of whom are appointed by the government as the official side's representatives, and the other half is chosen by the various staff association by a predetermined distribution plan. There are two chairs, a chairman and a vice chairman for the council. The vice chairman is a member of the staff side, while the chairman is a part of the official side. Four secretaries head the council. Two members of each party are designated to serve as secretaries. Initially, the cabinet appointed people to the official side, but nowadays the treasury fills vacancies. Members serve without a set term of office until they retire or resign. Heads of departments, deputy heads, and the lower ranking treasury officers make up the officials' side. Members are almost always active public servants. The official side also features three members of parliament from 1922 to 1930 on the advice of the Royal Commission on the Civil Services. This practice was discontinued. The major staff association organizations 1919 appointed the staff members in the early phases. Nevertheless, since 1919, the staff side's makeup has changed. The staff side is in charge of assigning a certain number of seats to various associations and filling the open positions. Staff association representatives elected to the legislature occasionally held seats on the council. The scope of the National Council shall comprise all matters which affect the conditions of the service of the staff. According to Whiteley Council's constitutions, the council uses its standing committees to handle specific issues like restructuring, promotion, layoffs, etc. The National Council produced insightful findings on reorganization, promotion, and other topics early. Second is departmental council. Every department typically has one departmental council established. These councils have a relatively modest number of members. The minister or the department head appoints members of the council official side. The association whose members work in that specific department elect the staff side members. Typically, the chairman serves as the department head. The secretary is typically one of the establishment division's member. Official from the association and civil servants are members as well. The departmental council may discuss any promotions perceived to have violated the promotion principles. The council have the authority to report issues that seem at odds with national agreements and fall under the purview of multiple departmental developments. There are roughly 70 departmental Whitley Council. And the last in the organization is District Council. Based on the same guidelines as departmental councils, these committees are established. They addresses personal issues that are solely local in nature. As proceedings of council is concerned, the National Council shall hold regular meeting as a needed but no fewer than once every 3 months. The chairman or the vice chairman shall call a special meeting of the council when necessary. The National Council meets very infrequently. It does much of its business through personal connections between the senior officials and the official side and the staff side as well as the committees. The official side represents chairs all committee and council meetings. The vice chairman from the staff side is never in charge. Voting is not used to decide where issues that committees or council considers. It is impossible to divide both parties. Therefore, a decision cannot be made without the Whiteley framework if the two parties disagree. The vice chairman and the chairman must sign decisions since they require an agreement from both parties. As a result, they are brought to the attention of the cabinet and put into effect with the approval. The national staff side has its standing orders and constitutions meeting at least once a month. In this meeting, votes are taken. This same holds for the departmental council. However, they may or may not submit a report on their activities for approval to department council, main body or one of its committees. The office committees established within each department are given great importance. These committees have much power to resolve local conflicts and address the primary issues of employees. There is number of advantages that we find in the Whiteley system. Dr. Feiner said, when resentment of arbitrary interference with habit is avoided, when there can be a semi-public review of a foolish, untactful or despotic shows of authority, something very important psychologically has been gained. Therefore, officials below the top tier now feel that any attempt at jobbery will likely to be discovered and stopped regarding promotions, leave and other official advantages. The departmental council have created a priceless and vital environment of amicable and cordial relations between superiors and subordinates. The most significant benefit of Whiteley Council has been the improvement of the cordial rapport between government employees and the workforce. The most significant thing is that the Whitler Council has been the improvement of the cordial reports. So, in that way, the workplace becomes very cordial and smooth functioning becomes very possible in every organization. Sir Albert Day says Whiteleyism has greatly improved the harmony of the staff movement and give it a sense of shared purpose and corporate responsibility that it was previously woefully lacking. There are moments when significant discrepancies are exposed and there can even be a significant blow-offs. Whiteley councils have also improved administrative morale and efficiency by giving employers and employee a place to gather and discuss issues and mutual concerns. This has improved communications between the two parties and dispelled many myths. The government knows the staff's viewpoints and can change its policy if needed. So, going through these advantages and organizational structure, we can conclude that the establishment of Whitley Council in England has greatly benefited the civil services. The departmental and the national council have done a great job addressing the civil services issues, including reclassification, pay, political rights, further educations and training, promotions, discipline, and overall morale. But we cannot presume that Whiteleyism has not encountered opposition in Britain. Several department heads testified before the Tomlin Commission that they were adamantly in favor of abolishing Whiteley Council. Whiteleyism has been openly opposed by trade unionism, a radical form of socialism which fears it may weaken the aggressiveness nature of labor. So, the Whiteley system varies depending on the departments. Dr. Gladden states Whiteleyism has been a great success in some offices. Its achievement has been only moderate in other, possibly the majority. Everything in department and everything is dependent on the attitudes in which it has been handled. Success had been guaranteed when the personnel and officials have shown the highest level of cooperation. Higher ranking officers have seen the system as an infringement on their natural rights, and failure has inevitable when staff members have approached it with a first time give last mentality. The staff's officials' cooperative attitudes make Whiteley Council successful. The Whiteley Council device is assured if the authorities exhibits snobbery and think it is degrading to interact with the employees on an equal footing, or if the employees reject the ideas of compromise and give and talk. So here we say that in that circumstances, the staffs and officials cooperative attitudes make Whiteley Council successful. The Whiteley Council demise is assured if the authorities exhibit snobbery and think it disregarding to interact with employees on an equal footing, or if the employees reject the ideas of compromise and give and take. Still, the Whitley method will likely succeed if the authorities are not haughty or dictatorial and the staff members large national issues while focusing on its demands. Whiteley's success undoubtedly depends on both parties embracing a cooperative and compromise focused approach rather than one of the conflict and dispute. Thank you.